At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest for the evening. Coming to us live all the way across the pond, actually from Plymouth, England, is where he's at right now. Please welcome author Nigel Watson. Nigel, are you out there, sir?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. What's the weather like in Plymouth, England right now?
It's quite dull and rainy. Tends to get a lot of rain being near the coast.
Ah, yes. You're over on the east side of
Um,
England, right?
the southwest.
South southwest. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm totally mixed up there. My wife and I are planning a trip over to England soon, and we're just trying to figure out the best time to go, so that there's not too many tourists, but it's not too rainy. Well,
Yeah.
when's the best time to visit England?
I think April and May are probably good times.
April or
Um,
May?
yeah. But you can never guarantee the weather. You can just drop lucky with it or not.
Right.
So unpredictable. Especially like here on the south coast where you get a lot of rain and variable weather conditions.
Ah, well, if it didn't rain, it wouldn't be a trip to England, I don't think, for people from the state. Anyway, so Nigel, of course, you're here tonight to talk about your new book, UFO Investigations Manual. But this is not your first UFO related book, is it?
No, the first book I wrote was called Portraits of Alien Encounters, and that came about after Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out in Britain in the late 1970s.
Oh,
And the film caused so much interest, lots of people reported UFO sightings and also quite high strangeness sightings, something we hadn't come across before really, because abductions were quite rare in those days. So basically, I got passed on a lot of reports in northern England, so I went and interviewed quite a lot of different people, and then I wrote up all the information that became that book.
so now 30 years later, now I know you've done some other books. You do other books besides UFOs, right?
Mainly UFO books,
Oh,
really.
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, mainly. Well, I'd write other books, but mainly I do a lot of articles and things like that. So
Ah,
books are more of a rarity, really, and obviously need a lot more research and effort. Another book I did about, well, it was about just over 10 years ago, was called The Scareship Mystery, that looked at all the historical cases of UFO sightings, at the beginning of the 20th century,
mhm.
and that covered the British 1909 airship scare and the 1913 one, plus ones that occurred in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. So
Oh,
that
so,
quite a lot of work and archive research went into that,
oh,
and I'm using a lot of information for that for a book I'm currently writing, which will be about UFOs of World War One.
World War
Um,
One. Wow,
yeah,
that'll be interesting. I don't think I've ever seen one about World War One.
no, even if you Google that, you don't find much information. And a friend of mine called Granville Odroyd did a lot of archive research, mainly in the Public Records Office, and found hundreds of reports of phantom airships and aircraft seen over Britain, particularly in the first few weeks of the war in August 1914, and a few other odd sightings, sort of in 1915 and 1916. One of the concerns was that the Germans were operating a secret airbase in Scotland or the Lake District. So they did send quite a lot of troops and even Boy Scouts to search for where this enemy aircraft might be operating. But despite, literally hundreds of reports and the occasional case of sentries even shooting at lights in the sky, nothing positive was actually found.
Very strange. Well, that'll be a very interesting book. When do you hope to have that one published?
Sort of later this year, really.
Ah,
As
very good.
I'm sort of halfway through it, but obviously there's quite a lot more things to add to it.
Excellent.
But I think as well, it's sort of interesting in the context of the UFOs really of today. Obviously, UFOs today are it's an umbrella term to cover lots of different things, whereas obviously back then we just thought we were German aircraft and nothing else really.
Ah, okay.
So
I gotcha. Now, one thing that I find pretty cool about your latest book here, UFO Investigations Manual, is the publisher. It is put out by Haynes, and I
right.
think people here in the States will probably recognize that name, Haynes, as they produce a lot of automobile repair manuals. That's what they're known for over here, I
Um,
believe. So I found it quite interesting that they're publishing this book about UFOs, which is great because they are very much publicly known. So,
yeah. Well, they've actually expanded the range to cover like spacecraft, the space shuttle, and the International Space Station. So I thought it would be nice for them to do one about UFOs. And so when I approached them over a year ago, they were quite keen on the idea. And originally it was just going to be an investigator's manual, how to research and investigate UFO sightings and how to conduct sky watches and set up telescopes and recording equipment. But as I was writing it, I thought it would be a good idea to do an overview of the O subject from like the history of sightings from the 1890s right up to 1947 when Kenneth Arnold saw his UFOs and the term flying saucer was coined. And then I look at all the official investigations that have been conducted since then, particularly Project Blue Book, and then I look at how UFO cases are being classified, mainly looking at Hynek's classification system. And then by using that system, then you can look at how different types of UFO sightings might be explained. For example, if somebody sees a light in the sky that's visible for a long period of time, it's more likely to be a star than something else, really. Whereas
right.
if it's a sort of moving light, it could be an aircraft. So it's just a way of eliminating other things, because I think most people would agree that sort of 90% of UFO sightings are sort of misidentifications of things,
Yes.
and also in sort of frightening or unusual circumstances, a light in the sky can take on a lot more life of its own. Really, it can be seen to be doing strange manoeuvres or be cause fear in the witness, and in a way, that's probably one reason why a lot of sightings were made in the First World War and later in the Second World War with regard to Foo Fighters, in that in a stressful situation, people are more alert to what's going on around them. So anything unusual, heightens the senses and causes more fear, really. So what could be quite mundane to us in a sort of sober setting can be quite frightening to a witness at night.
Absolutely. And excuse me, I you had mentioned Kenneth Arnold coining the term flying saucers. I'm actually going to be interviewing Kenneth Arnold's granddaughter
All right.
later today.
All right. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. I guess she does have some stories to tell and things that the press may not know or books have said.
Yeah.
So your book, this new one, UFO Investigations Manual. So it's not really so much an investigations manual about how to investigate UFOs.
Mm.
Is there
Mm.
is there a chapter on best practices, or is this more of just a historical look at
I've
UFOs?
I've actually got quite a few pages about sky watching and how to investigate, and also I've put quite a lot of web links of resources so that if you want to investigate a case, I've put quite a few links to official websites where you can download investigation reports and also places where you can report information to. Um, I've also got a lot of references to archives because obviously a lot of people might want to do their own historical research. And unfortunately, nowadays, you can actually do a lot of that online rather than actually have to physically go to libraries. The in particular, in America, there's the Blue Book files are quite massive, really, and most of that's been transferred online. And there's so much material there. I don't think the surface has been scratched there into looking at cases of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. I see someone had made a comment about your new book, and they stated that one thing you stress in this book is how important it is to, when you're investigating, to go straight to the source material and not rely on website pointing to a website pointing to another website, as it
Yeah,
things tend to get lost in translation. Is that true? Is that something you do point out in your book?
yeah, I think that's I suppose the main problem of any kind of research, really, that you have to go and really interview the people involved or go to at least the primary resources. Often you might read a newspaper account of a UFO sighting, and when you actually speak to the person, they say it's nothing like how it was reported in the newspaper. Sometimes the newspapers might hype it up and make it sound more exceptional than it was. Another time, it might be only of a light in the sky, but when you actually talk to the person, it's far more involved than that. And also, I suppose as people come to trust you, they might tell you more about further sightings they've had and perhaps even encounters. So on that aspect, it is worth actually going to the witness. And also, like with historical research, it's better to look at documents of that period because often if you look in quite a few UFO books, there are historical cases, but they've been reported like 30 or 40 years later. And often, they can be distorted through people's memory of a sighting, or it could be just an outright hoax, really.
Right.
You know.
Uh, one thing I wanted to ask you, number one, have you ever had a UFO sighting yourself?
Quite a lot of people ask me that question, and it's sort of yes and no. I have seen lights in the sky and unusual things in the sky, but afterwards I've either thought, well, there could be several different explanations for it. One particularly good sighting I had was when I went to Warminster once several years ago, and we were driving along and we saw these bright lights in the distance, and we stopped the car and got out, and it seemed to be like a huge flying saucer in the distance with several lights along its disc. And as we were watching it, it came closer and closer, and then we could hear the engines coming from it, and we realised it was one of these advertising blimps, which was just slowly flying over the countryside. But
Ah,
if we just drove past or not stayed long enough, we'd have been convinced it was a sort of, a flying saucer of a, third kind almost, something straight out of a film.
wow.
So,
Yeah, and the fact that you were in Warminster, you know, I'm sure you were, thinking that you might see something anyway, right?
yeah, yeah, we'd especially gone on a sort of holiday there because that was one of the most important UFO hotspots of the 1960s,
Right.
in the world, really.
Yes. I had a gentleman on that's done a book about Warminster, and very fascinating case. Very fascinating. Uh, so, what do you think in regards to another big case over there in England, the Rendlesham Forest case? Uh,
um,
what
with
is
that case,
your?
I suppose.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I suppose it's a British equivalent of Roswell. Um, and like with Roswell, there's lots of different versions of the story. And I think also the story has kind of escalated over the years. Like now there are more stories that there was an actual close encounter of a third kind, or even the transfer of binary codes to one of the witnesses. So um, from what was just originally a sort of light in the sky over an American Air Force base in Britain, it's kind of escalated more to a close encounter with an object of some kind.
Yeah, and
So,
I think the latest information coming out of that case is that it appears the military has conveniently lost those folks' medical records.
all right.
You know,
Um,
very strange, very strange.
yeah, yeah. You often find records going astray or getting lost. I think the Ministry of Defence at one time just routinely destroyed a lot of UFO files up until the 1960s, but occasionally some of them do re-emerge again because often we had copies elsewhere. But that can be quite frustrating, and I suppose it helps people think that there's some sort of conspiracy as well. I think another thing with Rendlesham is that we researchers in Britain couldn't get information about it here, but we could use the Freedom of Information Act in the United States to get material about it. So until rules were relaxed in Britain, the main source of information was from the United States, which is quite frustrating, really, and ironic. But
Yeah,
I think it's one of these cases where it's going to be like Roswell, really, in that some people believe in it firmly that there was some sort of solid encounter with an object, and then you've got the other people who say it's just something that's got more complicated over the years, and it's just a combination of rumours and stories, really. So I don't think we're ever going to get a positive answer to it.
yeah. I don't think we'll ever get the whole truth. We might get
No,
bits and pieces.
yeah,
Now,
and of course,
oh,
yeah.
go ahead, please.
I was going to say another problem is often the military have used UFO sightings as a means of covering up their activities. For example, the CIA admits that their spy aircraft in the 1960s probably caused something like 50% of all UFO sightings over the USA. So in a way, it's convenient for them to label things as UFOs because they know it will be subject to ridicule or it's a sort of passing fancy. So they can use UFOs as a way of doing that.
Now, your latest book here, UFO Investigations Manual. It states that it looks at cases starting back from 1892 until present day. As you were putting this book together, is there one case that really stands out over the rest of them as far as you're personally concerned?
My favourite case is the Betty and Barney Hill case
Hmm.
because it involved two people, and it started off with a simple light in the sky following them, and then kind of escalated as they
Right,
drove along. They saw a UFO with occupants inside it. Well, Barney did through binoculars,
right.
and then of course they had their missing time when it was only years later through hypnotic regression that they actually sort of record what might have happened to them.
Right, right. I've had Kathleen Martin on the show. Uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and she has given the account of that particular case, and just it's just amazing stuff. So, what is your hope for this book? Do you think that we need to get this UFO information out in a more accepted public fashion? Do you feel like UFOs, especially over there in England, are they still being looked at as a somewhat taboo subject? Is it getting better? Is it getting more
Um,
open?
I thought it was getting more open, but I tried publicising the book on an astronomy website, and they actually blocked it because they said it wasn't scientific or credible, and said it was equivalent to astrology, and so
Oh,
they didn't they dismissed it out of hand. So I deleted my posting, but I thought that was rather strange because about 20, 30 years ago I used to give talks at a local astronomy meeting, and they were quite interested in it because I think astronomy is something that it's useful to know about astronomy to eliminate cases, and I
absolutely.
think often astronomers do see strange things in the sky, so it'd be useful for them to learn more about the subject. And I think that's the whole point of a book, is to give a good general understanding of a subject, something that is difficult to obtain from the internet, where um, it's very difficult to get a comprehensive picture because there's either lots of information out there, or information that's hard to assimilate for a newcomer, really.
Yeah.
So this is a book that offers no history and why certain classification systems came about, and why things like the extraterrestrial hypothesis and other theories have come about, really. So I think it's a useful book, from a ufologist point of view, and also as a handy book for anyone who's just so mildly interested in the subject, because then you've got most of the information at your fingertips to, you know, pursue the subject further if it takes your interest.
Very good. Very good. You know, as the viewers will know, I consider myself a newbie to ufology. Just a
Right.
few years really, and even after this short amount of time being involved in the subject, I cannot understand how any intelligent human being can say there's no such things as UFOs. I just think
Right.
the evidence is overwhelming. Now that doesn't, answer the question: where are they from? Who are they? What's behind it?
Mm.
All that other stuff. But to simply say that UFOs don't exist and every sighting can be explained away,
Mm.
I don't see how people can say that. I just don't.
No. I think there is a core of sightings that are worth exploring scientifically, but the whole subject's got lots of different avenues that can be of interest to, from everyone from, say, the psychologist or the sociological point of view of it, which can look at it whether it's true or not, right through to, it could be rare plasma phenomena or aspects of it. So I think there's so many things you can study, really. And I think just to dismiss a subject out of hand is usually as a result of ignorance.
Yeah. So where can people purchase your book?
I think mainly through Amazon, obviously Haynes' website, which you can go to. I think quite a lot of book selling websites actually stock the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the United States, I'm not sure if we've got a special edition out there yet or not, but you can get it through places like Amazon.
No,
And certainly through.
What do you mean special edition?
I think we're going to publish an American edition. I think it's going to be in March, but you can get the British edition right now. Yeah.
Ah. Well, what'll be the difference between the British and the American version?
I think it's a case of just changing the spelling of things like colour.
Okay. I hear you. They probably have to dumb it down a little bit for us Americans as well, right? I got you. Well, listen, Nigel, we have hit the end of the show here. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day, and we kind of had to set up a special time here because Nigel is 6 hours ahead of us. So I appreciate you working with me on that. And so we will be looking at this book, UFO Investigations Manual, and we'll also be keeping our eyes open for your next book coming out. And when that comes out, please let me know and come back and talk to us about it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
All right. Very good,
All right.
Nigel. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
All right. Good evening to you.
Bye-bye.
Open the door, you'll find the secret. To find the answer is to keep it.